Andy Colvin here. We're back for another installment of the Mothman's Photographer. It's November 13th, 2021. I'm awaiting the arrival of the PRP, Paranormal Investigation Team from Chicago. The weather's supposed to turn bad, so I'm taking this little brief moment of sunlight to show you an important tool for paranormal investigation, and that is the muscle car. Here we have the 72 Chevy Chevelle Malibu with the 350, the original wheels. What else we got? Got the iconic front grille there. And look inside. This is one of the best Chevelles on earth. It's got your perfect interior, not a flaw in it. Back seats perfect. Now you get a survivor car and you take it to West Virginia to interview witnesses. If you're from the area, you'll do pretty well without a muscle car because you kind of speak the language and you can pretty quickly get some stories out of people. However, for those that are more not from the area, having the muscle car would be a definite addition, because people are going to come out, want to talk to you about the car. They come out of the woodwork. It's amazing. And so then you have the opportunity to say, hey, what's the weirdest thing that ever happened to you? And boom, you're going to get the stories. So here's the back end of this baby. As you can see, it's an Arizona car. It was kept in a barn for 40 years, not driven. And so everything on it is in pristine shape, very low mileage, all original, everything, papers, etc., etc. I've been told it's the best Chevelle to be found at this point in time. There may be others that come out of the woodwork. I'm awaiting the arrival of the PRP team from Chicago. We're going to look at some Indian mounds today. And I want to show you how I prepare for a shoot and a research trip. Here we go. We've got the camera bag with all your various things. Computer for field download. This is an interesting little thing here that allows you to look at things that are very, very small. Basically open it up. I'll have to open it up first. And then we have our hat collection, because you always want to have a good selection of hats for various reasons. You got your weather protection as well as your style points on social media. And I've got my McLeod coat here, which I picked up years ago, and I'm going to see if Dr. Bill wants to wear it, along with probably this hat, to get the best Western type look so that you can compete with the cryptozoologists today. You know, it's been 8 years since I was out here doing this, and well, I'll be out there in a minute. So a lot's changed, and we're going to be hitting some of those points as we go along. So buckle your seat for the Mothman's Photographer 2021.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
Good. We finally meet.
The PRP team has arrived.
I got
And-
a little something for
We're dumping it right in the cold water,
Andy
right off the
Thursday
bat.
night.
Thank
Just
you.
that much, just a little.
That's very sweet of you.
We're here with Bill Kuselis, who I mentioned before, of the PRP team. Bill, can you tell us about the PRP team?
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for driving us around. We appreciate it. Phenomenology Research Partners came together a little over a year ago with a desire to be able to talk about paranormal phenomena occurring in ordinary circumstances. It's a combination of investigation and helping to educate folks who are somewhat interested in paranormal phenomena, but using a psychological lens and a scientific methodology to approach these things with, so that it's a real legitimate type of a science.
And it's within the field of psychology,
It is.
or your doctorate is psychology.
I hold a PhD in psychology, and my interest is in post-traumatic growth. It's investigating the good things that can come from traumatic experiences.
Can you tell me why I'm so messed up?
I didn't realize that you were messed up. I just thought you were misunderstood. I think it's a matter of pure misinterpretation of your true intent.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's very nice. We've
Also finished.
I've also spent a career in sales too, so I'm really good at telling people what they want to hear.
There's a lot of psychology involved in sales.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so far, you've done a study of the Point Pleasant people that were impacted by the Silver Bridge collapse. Do you have any preliminary thoughts on that?
Well, to date, we've had the opportunity to interview 8 people. We have 2 or 3 more queued up that we should be able to interview here in the next few months. But I have begun analyzing the data that we've received from the folks, most of them being second and third hand experiencers, meaning that they weren't necessarily on the bridge or right in front of the bridge as it went down. However, a couple of them have, and they've had family members who have also experienced, or really firsthand experienced, the bridge collapse itself. But one of the really interesting things, I think, about the community of Point Pleasant and the greater Ohio River Valley area is the resilience of the people who live there. We found that resilience is one of the key dimensions of post-traumatic growth that's already established itself in the beginnings of the study. Community building is huge. Obviously, community development is really something that's taken place as well too. There have been so many documentary films and so many folks visit Point Pleasant now as a result of not only the bridge collapse, but of course the Mothman phenomena and the legend that arose from that as well.
In your study, what are I take it you're gathering statistics of some kind based on the questions you ask, and you must have like some kind of, what was the word, like boxes you're clicking off, like will you say things like 50% of the witnesses we talked to had positive reinforced experiences afterward versus, I mean, are you asking questions that sort of get at some psychological factors you can quantify?
So I think to answer the question, Andy, it's more in lines of qualifying the things that were said than quantifying, because the study that we're doing is more of a grounded theory methodology, which is a qualitative approach to psychological analysis. So we're not using statistics per se. Quantitative is a methodology that we're not employing here, although I can say, based upon your question, that probably a full 100% of the people we've interviewed so far have illustrated some dimensions of growth to come from this very traumatic experience.
Amanda?
I agree with Bill.
Yep. Okay, we're approaching the Facebook computer. It's in 3 buildings so far that are about as big as 10 football fields each or something. So we're here again with the PRP team. And I would like to get their thoughts on... Maybe we could talk about social media as we go through. Amanda? Thoughts on social media today, its role in the paranormal? How do you guys respond as a team to social media? Is it just a place to advertise, or do you?
I mean, for me personally, I've not been using it very much. The last thing I posted was me proclaiming that my social media, my Facebook account now is solely to F with algorithms and data miners. I like to keep them guessing. I think I'm succeeding with that, because instead of getting advertisements that actually apply to me, they're sending me ads for things like men's underwear and things that I would not buy. So, I think I'm succeeding in screwing with them. Wow. So here
Amanda,
we're
that's
coming
one
up
building.
on-
That's one building. Look how long it is.
That is Facebook right there.
So is that
That's
primarily
Meta.
a data center? Is that what that is, or what's the deal?
Well, that building there looks like it's about a quarter of a mile long to me, or something close, right?
It looks like it's a prison. Those
And there's
gates.
3 of them so far. They're actually going to build more.
They don't have
Gotcha.
barbed wire at the top, so.
Oh, that's true.
Yet.
It's a nice prison.
You can see that there's nowhere to pull off
Yeah.
It's a
here on
prison
the
to
road.
us, because they're storing all of
And-
our information there.
All of your
Great
data.
point.
And then
Yep.
what I think is happening is then across the road here, they've got wires going under the road to the new Google facility. Did we miss the sign, or is it down here?
Sure.
I think it's down here. So there's 2 more buildings, so that's 5 so far. All as long as 2 or 3 football fields at least.
Well, you can see into that one.
It's a big computer bank.
Here's a sign.
And then over here is the Google headquarters. Let's see, Google that they're building there.
If
And-
we were 11-11, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah.
So I think they're just sharing information. Why would you? Are they here together just to you know how restaurants will put themselves right next to their competitor, but that doesn't really seem to apply here, because this isn't a retail.
Can I rain on your parade?
No, and they.
Oh, sure. Do you want to be filmed, or do you just want to
I don't want to
speak?
be filmed. What if it's just that they need the same technology, fiber optic cables or whatever? They're putting it in here.
That's what.
instead.
Yes, that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, they're sharing resources, not necessarily
That's the
information.
Good word for it. Resources.
Bill, have you thought of anything since we last spoke?
Well, what I was thinking about when you guys were talking is the way that Walgreens and CVS always position themselves across from one another, and that's to stake out territory. There's no question about that. I think Lisa brings up a good point, talking about utilizing the same connectivity, having the same amenities set up, because both facilities are very similar. And they're both big data repositories, but I think your point, Andy, that you're bringing up about them maybe collaborating with one another, I mean, that brings out my inner conspirator.
They have to be collaborating on the resources.
Yeah.
What about Mrs. Kuslas? What about your thoughts?
Well, yeah, Jackie, you.
I don't have much of a thought because I can't hear very well back
Well,
here.
Andy had asked about our kind of social media strategy for PRP, and you seem to do most of our social media, at least on Facebook, right?
No.
No?
No, we're not
think you-
utilizing it.
Oh,
No.
we
We have
have.
a website, but we don't utilize that very well either.
Yeah, we're
I
not.
think that there's so much stuff on the internet now that people
Yeah.
don't really look at much anyway. So every now and then we put something up.
Yeah.
It could be utilized better.
Yeah, and then, well, since we have a group page, or kind of a business page, I think our posts get pretty buried because we're not paying for ads.
Well, you guys haven't rigged Google to get all the reports to
No.
come into your
Right.
site
No,
like
we gotta
Not
get
at
a hold
all.
of Tobias and find out how to do that.
We gotta
Right.
do our search
We're totally
engine
behind.
optimization. We don't.
We're behind when it comes to utilizing the technology, but what I can say is that because we've had an opportunity to be on a number of different podcasts and radio shows, that every time one of those happens, we have the opportunity to get a bunch of Facebook friend requests, which is really unusual because they're coming from all different directions of people we'd never met before.
Do you think it's related to our podcast? Because I get them anyway.
I've seen an uptick in the last 2 weeks of people requesting me, which is not normally the way that I have built my network. It's been more me reaching out to them, but it's been at least 10 to 1 here the last several weeks where they've been requesting that I connect with them, not me requesting that they connect with me.
So you're saying they're popular?
I'm in a roundabout way, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
popular.
They hear my voice and it's interesting. I guess they're not totally put off by it.
We are here at the Newark Earthworks, Newark, Ohio. This great circle behind us is this perfect size to fit the Great Pyramid in. It was once an Indian village, and now the whole part of the complex has been turned into a golf course. Or has been for many years, and they're now fighting over turning it back over to the natives. And this is one reason I showed the van, because we don't bring muscle cars to Native American sites. You don't want the two powers conflicting. So we're here in the van with the PRP team. We're going to be heading into the circle now where the team is situated and are checking out the vibrations. As you can see, they dug out part of the earth and piled it on the outside, so it's a big gully there, like a moat, which kind of protects the center area here. The team is out there somewhere, and we need to cross over that bridge. Thoughts on the center of the circle?
I like it. I like it. We were walking up here, and all of a sudden, I thought you were behind us. And I turn around, and no, it's a buck. Just
I saw that.
right here. Yeah. So that was exciting.
These trees in here are older than Jesus. I think no, that couldn't be, could it?
Well, he would be what?
I don't think there's any.
2021 years old, right?
Yeah.
Roundabout.
I think they have an old tree here that's certainly before the time of Columbus.
So what's the reasoning behind the shape of these, though? I've seen the mounds where it's just one. It looks like we have a few here.
It looks like a triad. Like
Yeah.
maybe the chief or the top three lived there, or maybe that was the.
What happens when you go in
Main-
the middle of it?
That could be the main. Well, let's do it
Yeah.
at some point. I mean, do you want to?
I did bring the spirit box and the
Oh yeah.
Vic Firths. I forgot the blindfold.
Okay, Amanda has discussed bringing out the box.
Yeah. Yeah.
And see what we're going to get here in the center of the Great Circle, the center of the pyramid, so to speak. There's a little series of mounds here in the middle, possibly where they did rituals.
If I sit with my back to the tree.
So
What were the tribes here?
Hopewell.
Hopewell's kind of catch-all phrase. Can you tell us about the box? Because it seems like you and Amanda do the box the most.
Like, how do we do it?
Yeah, just for those, I know a lot of people are familiar with the ghost box, But you guys amplify it?
Yeah, Amanda will put her headphones on and cover her eyes so that way she won't have any external. She'll just be repeating what she's hearing out of the box. Sometimes it's pretty frightening, and other times it's just amazing.
It sounded like you had an experience on Woodward Drive when we were doing the box.
Oh, yeah.
Where the spirits were trying to get in, and Harriet was on the line on the Zoom
Yes.
saying that this is some powerful spirit trying to communicate, and the car felt like the car was rocking.
Yes, it literally felt like somebody had the front bumper and the back bumper and was like literally rocking the car like very aggressively. And I had on the headset and the blindfolds, and that freaked me out to the point I took them off when I was done.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I was doing the box. I thought you guys were messing with me, or you guys were shifting around or something, because I felt that the car going back and forth dramatically. It wasn't just a little sheepy or...
Yeah, I was on the other line too, and I
saw it freaking out.
I saw it happen. Bill, you experienced it, right? Had a feeling of the top of your head coming out?
When we were on Woodward Drive the first time a year ago, and Jackie and I were questioning Amanda, and she was responding back to us. Both Jackie and I, as well as Amanda, all three of us were experiencing some type of distortion, some type of pulling sensation that was going on at the head. And I felt mine around like where the third eye area is, and I think the ladies had a little different experience than that. But all three of us, both times we were there, experienced physical things that we could not explain.
So what are we going to get today? Are you ready?
What?
Are you ready? Have you started? Have you already begun?
No, I'm just getting it ready to go. But,
I see you have the vaunted
oh, yes.
Crown Royal bag.
Well,
Oh, they're great for that stuff.
any good audio equipment needs a Crown Royal bag.
Absolutely.
So,
Microphones.
headphones. Usually there's a blindfold, but I forgot it, so I'm just going to do this.
We'll trust you.
This is an eagle mount.
Is it?
It's supposed to be an effigy of an eagle, I believe.
Oh, really?
All right, I'm going away now.
Huh.
A round eagle?
Not round, like...
Oh, this part in the middle, yes.
No,
it
this
is.
somehow...
Yes, this is shaped like a bird, I believe.
It's shaped.
It's kind of like looking at constellations. I don't know what
One thing you need on these trips is Italian chocolate.
Before we begin, we like to set an intention, and that intention is to not allow anything that would cause us harm. It's coming from beyond our physical perception, so we ask that whatever does manifest to us does not have any bad intentions. It only wants to give us information and to bring us good information that's not going to cause any harm.
Jackie is asking, can the spirits tell us what the actual tribe name was that lived here? Because right now they're using Hopewell, and that's kind of a catch-all term. Bill just asked who's responsible for building the mound, because that's a bit of a mystery too. So what is this device?
Well, it's supposed
particular
to...
name.
If there's any energy...
Particular name?
She said
Can
particular
you
name.
elaborate?
I'm not getting any spikes at all of energy on this.
Sure.
Oh my God.
No.
Stuart?
Gnome Z.
Can you be more specific?
Live at a risk.
Live at a risk? Who's at risk?
You can tell that another
What was the purpose of building this specific mound?
yes.
Yes, what?
Near there.
Near where?
Help populate.
Help populate?
It's funding. Stay apart.
Stay apart is like in reference to the different mounds that are
I
here.
heard Amanda talking about. Watch it. They're all in there looking now.
Who?
Awesome.
Who is looking?
It's a great vibe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lisa,
We have to talk about life.
Not today.
Turn. Committee. I can help some.
Who was the chieftain in charge when this was being created? You can almost see the outline of the eagle. Like, if you're looking at it that way, it looks like
No
the
more
head
here.
and then the spread wings here.
do you not want to communicate?
A lot.
Talking a lot.
Something a lot of sense here right
Yeah.
now. Maybe you'll get into it.
There's 1001. I'm Z.
Z?
And Z.
Does that mean you're last?
Z. Okay.
Okay.
Bring it back in.
I wonder if 1001 are the members of the tribe.
That's what I was thinking.
It's alright.
Lisa
About-
had said that some of these are burial mounds.
Well, what tribes start with a Z?
I don't know.
I don't either.
2. Gonna be down 98.
Millimeter's still at negative 144. Or 14.4.
It's nothing. There's no movement.
It's
Okay.
9 1
9-1.
1
911. Emergency.
on one of the defensive. We are visitors.
We are
And watch
Are you from outer space?
for
Were you actual Native Americans
Force.
or were you aliens that built this?
Watch for force.
Watch for force?
The wind seems to have died down.
Yeah.
coverage light now for liberty.
Now for Liberty.
This is supposed to be 2,000 years old.
This whole construction is 2,000 years old,
Yeah.
according to the design in front.
She just said, be killed.
Back on it.
Be killed, back on it.
I know corner. They have the town. It's the kind of thing that you have a tree.
I think you have a tree, like just leaning against a tree.
We're sitting next to a tree.
It's
This tree looks old, though.
old.
It's 2,000 years old.
She just said it's old.
It's several hundred years old,
Yeah.
easily.
Its age,
What is its age?
divine process.
What is the age? Is this actually 2,000 years old, or is it older?
Or drug up. It's a human.
Did you say inhuman or ahuman?
What?
Inhuman or ahuman?
Please. Now. They. Okay.
What is the purpose of this mound? I mean, just to mark territory, to honor gods? I don't understand.
Is it protective?
Go down.
Go down.
Stay. Sleep. It's a part of India. It's
Indian memorial.
going for holy.
Holy.
What are you? Boyfriend. Bring it down. Andy.
Bring it down, Andy. Bring the camera down there. Get back down there. Enough about
It's
Amanda. Let's talk about the Native
hidden
Americans.
around.
What is here?
It's down.
Is it down?
Get it. Down. Take it.
Take it.
Take what?
What's down deep?
I don't think we can dig here legally.
Is there some way to reach it spiritually?
I wish. A bit. Damn.
It's heading straight out the opening. It's so cool.
So there's an eagle here.
See the wings? And we're on the tail back here.
Right. There's
And
the
it's like it's heading out. It's like a runway. It's going right out the opening of the circle mound.
opening out there.
And then the just for what's FYI, little information center says there was a longhouse underneath here. And then
That's what I said.
Oh, you knew that already.
Well, that's what I figured.
And then they at some point they quit using it and they created this effigy over it.
There's the left wing over there. Follow it around to the point or the head. There's our team over to the right wing, and then back down here to the tail, which is actually over there.
Well, there's this little semicircle back here. It's back. You see that little mound sticking up? I don't know if the camera can
Yeah.
catch it.
That's, yeah.
Seven.
7-7. What else?
What's 7-7 have to do with the Mothman?
Hang on. Count. On. Yes. This. Years to take
4 years.
most of the points from you can go backward back.
Are you telling us to leave?
Space travel.
Or
astral
you can
travel.
also frequent,
We've heard 77.
or maybe
And we heard 1-1.
happy,
Be happier if it was warmer.
and you can hold it. Hey, you in?
Yeah. Thinking about it.
And it's 50 20. One. Not a problem. You got it.
All right. And then, interestingly enough, kind of in the back, when we start taking a look at it, sometimes it makes more sense, sometimes it doesn't. We were kind of inclined to believe we weren't getting a lot in terms that was tangible, but maybe when we look at it later on, it might tell us something. We don't know.
And we got 77. We always get 77. Always. Either 77 or 77 comes up. But
7 is actually 11.
Upside down.
No, if you just break the pieces apart.
Oh, 1.
Yeah.
And she did say 1. You said
Yeah.
1 at one point.
Yeah.
And you said something like, get the fuck out.
no, you said, yeah,
There was
okay.
an expletive. I'm like, that's not on the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
It's
happened to
not
me in Point
broadcast
Pleasant.
on the radio.
That happened to me in Point Pleasant.
Oh, that's weird.
At the mansion.
So you're hearing
Yeah.
curse words.
Yeah, that's not what it said. Fuck off. That's what it was. That's what it was.
What did I
It's like,
get the why the fuck
It's
not or
on.
something like that?
When we get back in the car, I'll play it back
Okay.
so we can actually hear it because I recorded it. I got like 5 minutes on my phone.
Oh,
yeah.
how long?
And-
was I?
I don't know.
Maybe 15, 20. Not super long.
A little rusty.
And when you go back there, because I thought that was the tail and that was the head, but it didn't line
You're
up.
on the tail. There's the head.
It
Those
lines
are the
up.
wings. And we're flying out
It-
to the upper.
Yeah.
Okay.
It lines
So
up
that's what you were
perfectly
doing
here.
when you were up here walking around.
Yeah.
I was wondering. I thought maybe you were looking for a pet.
That's awesome.
Lisa often
awesome.
makes important discoveries,
That's one
and then she
important
doesn't want to be on TV.
This one has to be. This
She
one's
cued
over
into
the.
it. She found it for us.
Yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
Plus she's super psychic, but she won't admit it.
Really?
Yeah, she's super psychic.
Jackie picks up on things all the time. It's
The wings are going out like
not
that,
necessarily
and
taboo,
it's
but
getting ready
people
to
don't
take
buy
off
it.
right through between.
But I think we all have
all
perceptive
the-
faculties. It's
We
just
do.
a matter of honing them and,
Yeah.
and practicing them.
Like an area.
And some people seem
Isn't
to be
that
better
cool?
at that than others.
Yeah.
Jackie started practicing that
really
thing that Andy
neat.
had shared with us in terms of visualizing what's on the table in another room. And she was beginning to give me on a daily basis, I would place something in different spots in my desk. And she would tell me, oh, there's this, there's that, let me draw this and that, what does this mean?
It
And
was astral travel.
it was crazy.
That's what
I
I-
mean,
Very,
not crazy.
very minimal form of it, but
Wow.
I
Yeah.
totally expected that you would get it. I knew you would do it.
I was like, what? Wow, this is weird.
Amanda, who's home?
Because I didn't know what I was drawing, you know?
Huh?
I was just drawing lines and shapes and things, and then I would go look on his desk, and it was like, oh my God, there it is. It's just like right there. And I would draw out what was on the desk and look at what I had, and it was pretty cool.
And the one thing that you mentioned too that made no sense to you at all was she had drawn something that was like a cross hatching, almost like a crossword puzzle type thing. She had no idea what that was
A grid.
until she went into my office and saw my laptop sitting there. It's almost never sitting there, but I had left it there that day and it was open. So the grid that she was drawing was the keys of the keyboard.
It was like the keyboard.
It was really
But
neat.
yeah, it was neat.
People can come in and out. It doesn't have any meaning beyond function. But then they build effigies, so then you think, okay, no, everything has meaning to them. Or it
Yeah,
had
I
meaning
mean,
to them.
Yeah.
this is a lot of effort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm sure they had better things to do.
yeah.
Well, it's like
Yeah,
the serpent
play
mound
with
too.
it.
You take a look at it, and it's just this amazing thing. But how did they have the
Yeah.
technology to figure out how to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a park in Wisconsin near Madison also that has effigies on the head. And I'm trying to think.
It's a giant eagle.
Giant eagle. Yeah, it looks like an eagle man almost.
Wow.
So tell us about
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Tell us about what this meter is doing again. Is it measuring magnetism?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
And there's
And
nothing.
you're getting zilch.
Nothing.
Which you
Yeah.
normally don't get.
Normally get something. When
Right.
we were in Thatcher Woods, this thing was shooting up to like 70, 90. I mean, just huge spikes, and would just. And we were doing the Estes spirit box. They were both doing it, and I was asking the questions, and I was walking around. And after we got done, we realized that we were in a circle of big rocks that somebody had put there, and it's like, what the heck are we in? You know, no wonder.
Weren't you just saying that there's a feeling of peace here?
Yes.
Yeah, there is.
And
Yeah.
you're feeling it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Lisa is.
Yes. Yeah, it feels good here.
Like even though it's cold and now my butt's all dirty and I don't want to leave here.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah.
really
Right.
good.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel
I'm
like
just
it's
happy
bad
standing
at all.
here.
No,
Right.
no.
That's one of the things I always feel when we're in the presence of Native American burial grounds. I don't want to be disrespectful. You know, the first time we were at the Chief Cornstalk area, we took tobacco that Lynn Robinson had given us and dropped it east, west, north, south, just to kind of to revere their practices.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
Was this a burial site?
to honor.
That's what I was doing in the parking lot.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they drop it. It
We
was in
thought
the
you were
form of ash. It was in the form of ash.
Contributing vapor
So you think there's a technology here of some kind?
I think that really pretty much anywhere that the Native Americans were, there was a reason as to why they built things that they did that we just don't understand today. So I think that this particular area here is just an example of that. It's beautifully constructed. It feels safe here. Our mal meter got absolutely no response whatsoever, which is really unusual. And although it's cold, it feels peaceful here.
No. Look at right here's that. So we must have been in this area.
Area 20.
No, we're in this one.
Are we?
We were in the circle.
So we were
right
going
there.
out this one.
No, but we didn't go out the opening.
No.
The opening, remember the eagle prior
Yeah.
to the opening?
That
we
would
went
be
off
the
the
eagle.
side
This
somewhere.
is the eagle right here then.
Yeah.
The effigy mounds are always multiple soils.
Okay, we are heading for the Jeffers Mound in Worthington, Ohio. I wonder about the name Jeffers, if this used to be, if it was named after the Jeffers mining family.
It tells you what they
Is there a thing there we can find out? That would be the family that mentored the Bush family into the steel business. And we visited earlier in the series went to the George W. Bush childhood home near here with Harriet, where she picked up a bunch of different psychic impressions. And Worthington had Worthington steel with the Bushes and the Rockefellers, and the Masonic Lodge with the Joseph K. Smith aprons all there, and making steel probably for all kinds of crazy things. I at one point I wondered if they made the steel for the Silver Bridge, but I think we ruled that out. Then we wondered if the Bushes made the steel for the Twin Towers, and I don't think we ever really figured that one out, because some of those contracts are secret. So we're about to come up to the mound here. Are you guys highly anticipating your visit to the mound? Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. What happened to the last mound there at the Newark? What did you? I guess you summed it up by saying that it was peaceful. And well, how about you, Amanda? You did this reading. Any new thoughts about the reading?
I mean, I really don't have any sense of what I'm saying when I do
Really?
the sessions. No, I remember little bits and pieces. I have no idea what I said, so I have to listen to it back, and it's a surprise to me what's happening and what's coming out of my mouth most of the time.
Does it?
But
do you come up with thoughts or theories about what was said?
I
after
do
you-
not. Well,
After
after I
you-
listen to it back, sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, a lot of times, more often than not, it starts making sense what I said.
Oh boy.
Here's the mound. It's pretty impressive. Nice little
It is.
high mound. Let's try to get there we go. Looking good. Well, you'll note that I'm wearing my special cryptozoological hat today. Yes, I have joined forces with Lauren Coleman and the cryptozoologists. I've decided to throw in the towel and just join up in order to get lucrative TV spots.
If you can't beat them, you just got to join them.
That's right.
I'm good. I'm better off without a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tried.
He's threw them up north.
Too big.
These guys are up from up north, and they just like aren't fazed by this stuff. Archaeologists believe archaeologists believe this is prehistoric mounds. It was used for rituals. Ritual occultism.
Uh-oh.
There it is.
Oops. That's not the timer. That was a timer.
Yes, here's where the old structure was. This mound is in a neighborhood.
That's where the hobbits live down there.
So Amanda, did you pick up something about the trees?
Oh no, I was just saying, I wonder if they know what these mounds are about. They live here. They know all
Well-
this sorts of stuff.
The natives could put themselves into trees for afterlife purposes, often burying themselves inside the tree bark. At least on big trees. I don't know about these. Maybe, yeah. They would peel back the bark, put the dead body in there, so the minerals from the body would get into the tree's nutrient system.
How big the tree is over there with the gold leaves. Like the base of the...
Yeah, that is big, isn't it? There's probably a whole tribe in that one.
It could be.
But with their roots going down into the mound and just in the area, I wonder if they're a part of it or they know what it's for or what's
Guess we'll find out.
about the ghost box session we did at the other mound was sometimes I feel just really icky when I do them. I can get agitated or just kind of like I'm coming out of my skin, like somebody, get out of my head. But that one, I think right after I came out of it, I said I felt like I'd just taken a few hour nap. Oh, I want to go back. It was very nice.
If we'd driven in there with a muscle car, wouldn't have got that result.
Probably not. Probably not.
I got her
Well,
laughing.
there would have been
I got her
warring
laughing.
factions then.
I think the
It'd be the
batteries are dead
horsepower
in this
versus the
thing.
horse riders, the spirits of the horse riders.
This is very pleasant also.
How come the batteries are dead in everything?
So right now we're experiencing battery loss in our batteries. I had 4 big ass camera batteries, all went drained like within 5 minutes.
And these have only been in here a very short time. And they're like supposed to be long life batteries.
This happens. I can't wear
Close
watches and stuff because I drain the batteries.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's probably something going on here magnetically that's doing it.
Do you have the millimeter?
No. I left it in the bag.
I'm sure it reads 0, probably. Like the other
Probably.
one.
Yeah.
Up
If it would
up
even
here,
turn on.
it might be higher down there.
It may not even turn on. This was on. It was off completely now. Nothing.
Okay, so Lisa asked Dr. Bill, about how he got to know me, and he told about how we were on Facebook. In 2013, he read Flying Saucer to the Center of Your Mind, and then started following what I was writing. And then he came to realize something about when I first got on Coast to Coast. That night or that next day, a report that had been sitting around for months suddenly gets in the news about the Chicago Mothman.
So I was contacted by Strange Beasts and Unknown Phenomena to do an interview with them. And Andy and I had been connected on Facebook and Facebook Messenger for a few years, but hadn't communicated a lot. And I went back through my notes to try to find out when Andy was interviewed by Coast to Coast AM. And I contacted Andy, and I'll remember it was during the workday when I was supposed to be doing other things. I sent him a message on Messenger, and I said, "Hey, Andy, do you remember where you published the transcription of your Coast to Coast AM interview, and what day that was?" And he had told me it was December 21st of 2011, which really was December 22nd because the whole thing started, August 22nd, because the whole interview started after midnight. So we communicated back and forth. He shared with me that it was in his publication called Mothman Squeaks, but we had identified that the very first Chicago Mothman, what is known as, in their, I guess I should say in Lon Strickler's words, the nexus of the Chicago Mothman flap phenomena, began on August the 22nd with a picture of a Native American, and in the background, in the sky, there appears to be some type of an anomalous something or other, which has been kind of determined to be a kite since then. But we were able to figure out that it was right after Andy's interview on Coast to Coast AM that the very next day this Chicago phenomenon kicked off.
And of course, that also happened to be the day that those mounds really do you in. Drain your batteries, mess your hair up. What was interesting was that at midnight or thereabouts, it would have been the night I was on the show, someone with Lauren Coleman's IP address erased me from the Wikipedia page about Mothman, because I had always had like a paragraph in there. Anyway, that got me thinking that maybe Lauren was behind the Chicago Mothman, which I think, now that we're 10 years down the road, he's the guy that's on TV talking about the Chicago Mothman most of the time, or people that work with him.
Just raising my hand.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question. Do you still have that IP address? Do you still know that IP address? Because
It'll be in Wikipedia. It's all there.
Some of this, Sam has done a bunch of work with looking up the IP addresses of a lot of these. There's several of the Chicago reports come from the same IP address, so it'd be interesting to see if it's the same.
Well, he did change again to another one, but you can clearly see that the second one is also.
Okay, but you don't have the first one still?
Well, the IP address that Sam has
It's on Wikipedia. It's all stored there.
is from Melrose Park. It's
right.
been linked back to Melrose
Okay.
Park, where Manuel Navarrette's trucking company is, in Melrose Park. Not saying it's coming from that trucking company, but it's coming from Melrose Park, so.
From where?
Manuel Navarrette.
Oh, really?
He's
He has a
UFO
trucking-
clearinghouse.
Right.
Yeah.
Tobias Wayland, who's a Chicago Mothman advocate, has admitted that him and Lon Strickler got the Google to send all the Mothman reports their way, which explains why I stopped getting Mothman reports. I used to get them till about 2010, 11, right around the same time. So, any other thoughts from you guys about Chicago Mothman? Sounds like you don't really buy it.
Absolutely don't. I don't believe that there's a Mothman. I believe that some people seriously believe they saw something. I don't think it's the same thing that's seen in other places. But I also think that a lot of the reports are made up.
Yeah, it's a mix.
Yeah, written specifically. They're nonsense. So many of them are so much nonsense that there's no way they can be true.
They're way too descript. I mean, a lot of the things that are written up are totally different than most reports you would see in a MUFON reporting. You know, from what I've understood, and only affiliated through MUFON with my friendship with Sam Moranto and attending
Amanda.
different groups, and with Amanda as well. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm not an active member and haven't been. But according to what I've understood, that as these reports are written, number one, they're extremely descriptive. Number two, they're very, very similar. A lot of the same terminology is utilized. One of our favorite ones that we've heard throughout various reports has been silhouetted against the moonlit sky. That's mentioned a number of times. There's just a lot of verbiage. A lot of things have been, I think, tried to pull in to draw that Native American connection, which began with Chief Cornstalk in the original Mothman sightings, and to incorporate that into the Chicagoland area with that picture of the Native American, which is really a figure that was put in front of a tobacco store, which is no longer there anymore, and then having this kite in the background that's basically supposed to be a sighting of Mothman the day after Andy Colvin gave his presentation on Coast to Coast AM.
Did you mention the red eyes in that? Because that's another thing that they always bring up is the red eyes. The bright red eyes, the ruby red eyes.
The writing style, whoever's writing these, it's the same style, it's the same cadence, but it's like they try to play different characters.
Yeah. Short stories.
They try to be Australian and pepper in really cliche Australian sort of lingo.
Like Jimmer does.
Oh.
He's done that. Keep digging, mate. Keep digging. All right, it's November 29th, 30th. It was great having the PRP team here. Unfortunately, they couldn't stay long. The weather was bad. But we have done a couple of Zoom things with them that I think they may allow us to put here somewhere in the series. Before I get started on a recap of the last few years, which may take a few days to get through, I wanted to show you what we discovered here on the door, right under my nose, for 15 years here in the Columbus house. Mothman is on the door of the bedroom. If I pull back all the way here, you can see head, wings, and of course, no feet, because no one ever seems to see the feet. But that is unbelievable, really. If you notice here, you can see the eyes, the bug eyes. Okay, well, the weather has turned dark, and I promised myself I would start this recap. One of the things that Bill said was important. He noticed that on the day that I was on Coast to Coast for the first time, in August of 2011. That was the very next morning, I think, I'm pretty sure, was when the Chicago Mothman sightings started. And of course, they had that sighting had actually been seen months before. Somebody decided in August to start promoting a sighting, supposed sighting from March, I think, where a picture of a kite was taken near this Indian statue in Chicago and purported to be Mothman. It was later debunked. But also what happened on that same day, or actually while I was on Coast to Coast itself, someone took me off of the Mothman Wikipedia page. I had a little paragraph there, I'd had it for years, and that person was probably the second incarnation of Lauren Coleman's sock puppet on Wikipedia, who's always going around editing, inserting, constantly like maintaining Lauren's page, and also doing other cryptozoology things around Wikipedia, like everywhere. It's a massive job, the amount of posting this person had done. Well, actually, they had done it under a previous IP address up until about 2007, maybe, when I figured out that Loren was doing his own Wikipedia page, which you're not supposed to do, and also inserting himself into all these other Wikipedia pages, and basically just running wild promoting the bogus field of cryptozoology, which was started by the CIA in the late 1960s or mid 1960s, or even earlier, to spy in other countries under the guise of looking for a Yeti or Sasquatch or what have you. Loren was very proud of this fact when he wrote a book about Tom Slick, talking about this history. So, although he may not be a CIA agent, Loren is certainly proud to be part of that spook tradition, and does lots of spook things, what I would call spook things, pranks, and so on and so forth. He's been pranking people for years. In fact, there's a letter in our last John Keel collection called The Pickled Finger of E.T. The last letter in there is one that I wrote to Keel in 2005, I think, where I suggested, hey, this Coleman is so obsessed with you. He's like following you around on the movie trail, trying to promote Mothman, the Mothman Prophecies movie, without your permission. He's just acting like he's got your permission, and he's going around saying that he's an official promoter of the movie, which he wasn't. And in that letter I say he's already admitted somewhere, and I don't have it in front of me, but he's written lots of little things over the years. When you get him into arguments and debates, he'll reveal things like he said he had been following Keel in the late 60s in Point Pleasant when Keel was down there. How did Loren even have the resources to do that? I mean, yeah, he could be making it up, but he certainly was old enough to be keeping track of all that stuff if he had the right connections, and he was soon to be revealed right after that to be a member of the Edmund Muskie Institute, which is a think tank, which was a left-wing think tank at the beginning, and then they sent some spooks in to infiltrate it and sort of turn it back to the middle. And I don't know if Loren was part of that, but he was certainly part of the Institute. I think he's said to have been in it in the early 70s, so not too long after. Maybe one of these think tanks that Loren was associated with had the resources to place surveillance equipment on Keel's car, telephone, whatever. And this prankster tradition of Loren's has continued on through the years as he has done things like the Mothman death list, which is a bogus list of people who have died that had something to do with the Mothman story. When Keel died, he appeared on a wake, an online wake for Keel, and made jokes, which were inappropriate, and it basically kept him blacklisted from the Mothman Festival for over 5 years. No one would have anything to do with him in Point Pleasant because of this stuff that he was saying. And finally, they let him back in 2016, which is the last time I was there, and Loren came over to my table with this grin on his face, and it was so strange the way he did it that I really kind of put it together. Hey, this is the Chicago Mothman. This is the guy that started that, because it had been going on for 5 years by then, and it really peaked in 2017 when Loren's book was coming out. The Ultimate Evil, Mothman, the Ultimate Evil, which purported to be a new rundown of the Mothman death list, and it only had 1 or 2 extra names to it. There wasn't anything new in the book and he had been proposing this book for 10 years. And during that 10 years, he didn't get any other work done that I can tell other than social media stuff, and probably buying a lot of books in the background. Loren is notorious for when an author dies, like John Keel, Gray Barker, Tim Beckley. I'm assuming he when Beckley died recently that Loren snatched up his book collection, because He does this very quietly. He's been doing it for a long time, and it came out recently in an article that he's moving he's opening a new bookstore or or cafe or something near Stephen King's place in Maine, so that he can draft off of Stephen King's foot traffic. And he says in the article that he has 100,000 books that he's going to be selling at this store. A huge it has to be moved by a tractor trailer. So I ask, how did this happen? How did Loren amass that much material? What was he paying these estates? I think this is why he does the obituaries. Anybody dies, Loren's the first one up with an obituary. I think that this is not just an advertisement for yourself because you're posting the obituary, but also makes you seem sympathetic to the author at hand, and therefore may make it easier to go to the estate and say, hey, what all did so and so have? Can I buy it? But you wonder what he paid for those things. What you do know is that when he sells them, even at just $10 a pop, that's $1 million right there. And I've often wondered just how Loren makes his money. I guess there's foot traffic for the museum. He hasn't done any books in a long time. I do know that he asks quite a bit for his appearances, such as this year at the 2021 Mothman Festival. Loren was invited to come. The festival was canceled in the end, but he was invited to come, and he asked for a big fee, hotel, flight, food, everything. And he had to be told, this is a free event. We can't afford to pay speakers. No one's ever gotten paid to speak there. And so he said, I'm not coming then. And then he posted apparently something about how a tornado was going to hit Point Pleasant, and that people should probably stay away from the festival. And this is one of the tornado hitting thing. It comes from the old Jim Brandon material, the anthropologist who Loren co-opted most of Brandon's work. It's all that Twilight language stuff and the power spots around the country and various synchronicities and things, one of which is that tornadoes don't tend to hit Indian Mound areas. They tend to hit trailer parks in towns called Lafayette, or with something called Lafayette nearby. Now, there isn't anything like that in Point Pleasant that I know of that's called Lafayette, but it was just a crass attempt to keep people from coming to the festival, just because he couldn't get what he wanted out of it. And that's classic Loren. I mean, he's done that all along. I remember when I was on the Mothman Lives list on Yahoo 20 years ago, I started talking about my Mothman video series that I was shooting, Mothman's Photographer, and just promoting it in a bland kind of way. But it didn't matter if it was something bland like that or if it was some great, what I thought was a great discovery. Loren would always, even if he hadn't been on there in weeks, he would immediately come on and say something detrimental about what I had done, and then steer people toward his own work or one of his buddies, his mini sock puppets or minions or whatever they are. He had people on the list that were working for him, some of whom later defected and revealed what had happened, that he had approached them with offers to help their career as a cryptozoologist and so forth, if they would only help police this list, where I was the most probably inconvenient poster. And so he would distract from anything I had to say about anything. And so I think this is the same thing that happened with the Coast to Coast show when I was on there. Loren was pissed off. Why? I have no idea. Something about my story doesn't sit right with him. I think it's the conspiracy stuff, because that was kind of what he reacted to first 20 years ago. Doesn't want that to be out for some reason. So that triggered him, and he apparently then, made some moves to distract. The first would be the very next day is the article about Mothman seen in Chicago. Immediate distraction from whatever, as people are trying to process the stuff I had said the night before. He's in there with a new thing to distract them, and then decided, I guess, probably to keep on doing it and get other people maybe to write reports. Now, what happened with the reports is Lon Strickler and Tobias Wayland, who both seem to be friendly with Lauren, rigged the Google results so that if anybody typed in, I want to report my Mothman story, it would go right to them. And then they had a strict policy of not sharing any information that they got from these people, not even their names. So, perfect setup for bogus stories about seeing Mothman in Chicago. And we know from the end result of all this that it was either Lauren, one of his sock puppets, or minions, because he ends up being the guy that they're talking about, that they're interviewing on TV about the Chicago Mothman. And where did Lauren get this from, this process? He got it from Gray Barker. I mean, I don't know that there's anything Lauren does that's original, really, but he's good at co-opting other stuff. And Gray Barker, of course, did this. He would go out and I don't know if he concocted things whole cloth or not, but he would find the people, the witnesses, get them going a little bit somehow, and then write their book or publish their book of their story and make money off of the sales of that. So this is a similar thing. Create a whole fake Mothman flap, draw all the attention away from Point Pleasant, where they've not been nice to you all these years, and get back at them. And the Mothman death list was one of those things where Keel had argued with Lauren, Keel had simply said something derogatory but true about Lauren in the early 80s in a magazine, Strange Magazine. And then in the next paragraph he had said something about people dying that were related to this Mothman story. Lauren just took the very next thing in the story, in the article, and blew it up into something he could promote, and that's how it works. So that's what else has happened in there? Well, he's promoted a lot of different things. The Montauk monster, the Bigfoot body, you name it. Whatever scam is working, he promotes it, and then when it's over and it's been proven to be a scam, he always backs off and says, "Well, I never said that was true or anything." Well, I guess one thing is, jumping back to now, we met with the PRP team right before November 22nd, which is the anniversary of the JFK assassination. And this may be, I don't know if this is why Lauren is down on my story or not, because 10 years ago I started realizing, or even earlier, maybe 15 years ago, that the JFK assassins were somehow linked to Point Pleasant, and it had shown up there, at least 2 or 3 of them, and that maybe they were hiding out in the bunkers in the TNT area because they used the same bunkers from the same companies in Louisiana, but got kicked out of their bunkers in Louisiana. So, but the spooks have lots of ways to just completely discombobulate everything and keep the truth from ever coming out. One of which, I think the main reason they don't like my story is because of the 911 thing. We had a precognition of 911 many years before it happened. And it's probably not the precognition part of it that they care about. It's just the fact that you're talking about 911. That is not something that we should be talking about. We're supposed to have moved on long ago. So what they did was they changed it to, instead of people who are Mothman witnesses having precognitions of 911, it was Mothman was seen at 911. Don't you know? He was flying right in there amongst the towers. See, when they go that direction, they don't really have to explain anything about Mothman's psychic connection to witnesses, or anything about the witnesses, really, because the action there is Mothman flying between the towers. So, boom, done. It's over. And that's a really kind of a brilliant distraction. I guess the biggest sort of thing that's happened in the last 10 years is the social media growth around the paranormal. It's spurred by all of the different crappy TV shows in the late 2000s about the paranormal. And so suddenly everybody's like, well, I can't get on TV maybe, but maybe I can if I get a blog going and a video and YouTube, and start promoting myself. And this, of course, is where Lauren really cleans up, because he promises them an appearance at the museum, appearances on TV. He's always had a close relationship with the various producers, which have made sure to keep me off of TV as much as possible. In his new book, by the way, going back to Lauren, The Ultimate Evil, Mothman, he claims it's a definitive history of all the movies and documentaries that have been done about Mothman up to that time. Of course, mine's not in there, even though it was the first one and the longest one, with more actual witnesses than any of the others. He goes, I asked him on Facebook, why didn't you review my DVD series, Lauren? Well, I never saw it. Why didn't you see it? Well, you never sent me a copy. Of course, it's 6 discs, and it's expensive to make, and I can't send those to everybody. If I'd have known Lauren wanted one, I certainly would have sent him one. But that was his excuse. Now, that's the lamest excuse ever. If you're going to do a definitive study of something, you got to spend money. Like when I did the John Keel collections, the books, I had to buy tons of rare articles and magazines for buku bucks just to unearth all that stuff, because I cared about the subject. I really cared. I'm not just pretending to care about the subject. Okay, so the last bit I did, I guess the camera wasn't recording, so I had to do it over again. What was it? I was talking about 2007, 8-ish, when I had been doing. This is when the whole social media thing kind of kicked in. That's when the CIA said that they were going to get involved in web operations. And at that time, I happened to be blogging about stuff for the first time on my website. And stuff about Indrid, people, were interested in it. But I also made the mistake of mentioning Lauren about a half dozen at the most times, and stuff he was doing. It was factual, it wasn't libelous. I didn't really try to interpret it too much. I just threw it out. Well, Lauren did this and that. What does that mean? Well, he didn't like that apparently, because my website got hit with millions of spam messages that were hardcore porn. So when anybody looked at my website, at my blog, at the bottom they'd see all these comments about hardcore porn. And a lot of people were really offended by this, and they probably don't like me today because of it. So that was a very clever thing. I had more hits than any other website on the West Coast because of all these spams. And the company that I was using, WebEddy, tried to fix the problem, stop it coming in. They said there was nothing they could do. It was military grade. Their only option was to literally start over with new servers. And they weren't really interested in having my account after that, so I just chucked the whole idea. That sort of thing has carried on. People are doing it more and more, messing with each other online, blocking people, unblocking when they want to look at your stuff. Using sock puppets is so prevalent now, but Lauren was doing this 20 years ago on the Yahoo list, as I mentioned. So he's an old hand at this stuff. So about 2008, I think, the date's a little hazy, but there was a Mothman sighting in Ravenna, Ohio, that I went and investigated, and I found that it was at a shopping shopping plaza called Midway, which is a name that comes up a lot, and that the sighting, there was an address there called 1111 Independence Avenue, and I was already on the trail of the 1111 thing. When you looked at that address from the sky, there were 4 buildings, and they looked like 111L, like 1111, but with an L on the last one. And that just happened to be the license plate number of a van that had followed the Frick brothers when they were in Youngstown, which is pretty close to where we were. When they were investigating a woman named Barbara in Youngstown who had seen, I think it was a statue of Jesus or Mary crying and some other weird stuff. And there were all these Barbs or Barbaras on the Mothman list who were always causing trouble in various ways. So that was all very mysterious. We didn't know what was going on with all the Barbaras, and did they have a connection to the Men in Black? Because this van really was, it said, they took pictures of the plates, and they say U.S. government 1111 with an L, 111L. Then we find the building. Then next to it, to that building, is an apartment building with all these weird antennas on top. And we went in there and we found that a lot of the trucks had Army Airborne 25th on stickers on them. And it turned, and I think I already knew by then. I looked into it, found that yes, 25th Airborne, which is really the Air Force, is involved in web operations on social media, and they, I think they're overseen by JSOC, JSOC. I'm not sure what that stands for anymore. It's been a while, but it looks like in this case that Mothman led me to wanted to lead someone. I happen to be the one to go there to find to see that this is to identify who was messing with social media. It's Army Airborne 25th, and they are going to blow smoke everywhere, which is what they've been doing. I mean, there's so much smoke blowing now that you can't even, it's almost a total waste of time. You got like Lon Strickler, now he's got a couple of women who claim to be able to channel the Chicago Mothman. So, you know, and this comes right after I've already revealed that I think it's either Lauren or some of his sock puppets or some combination of the cryptozoology scene around Lauren that came up with this, because he's the guy that ends up being the one who gets to be on TV for it. And so they just keep up in the ante. I mean, once you're into the land of mediumship, I mean, anything goes. But this is essentially going after the part of the Mothman story that I occupy, along with Harriet and some other psychics that lived in the area who were picking up all this stuff. This is a way to take that part of the Mothman story away, move it to Chicago, and you know, you just gotta wonder what the heck is what is this all about? And I really mean that. If you can answer it for me, Lauren, or somebody else who knows why, please let us know. Because it's just, don't you want to know what's really going on? Don't you want to know? Now, some of you may say, well, Andy, if you guys can be having psychic experiences with Mothman, then your stuff is just as questionable as Lon's. Except that there's a difference there. Lon just pulls up a couple of ladies who haven't, who don't have the connection to the original sightings or anything. Like Harriet has that connection, and not only that, but it's been confirmed. It was something I knew for a long time because I've been told by the guy on the X-Files who played the lone gunman with the long hair, who had me on his show, that, I was like, well, where did you guys get all those details that seem so similar to my story with Harriet and Woodward Drive? And he said that they had researched it somehow, but that I only had his word for it, and not much to go on. But as the years went by, and I was more connected to the group of people from the X-Files on social media, I come to find out other people have said this too. They didn't really know it was me or anything, but they were basically mining certain Yahoo groups in the early 90s for material. And I was on there at that time because I just read the Mothman prophecies, which put it all together for me. And so I was posting on the lists about my experiences. And so the writers for the X-Files saw this because they were actually on those same lists, like the Octopus. There were a bunch of them I was on. And those are really the good old, grand old days of conspiracy when everything was out there. And it was done by people that weren't just past tourists. They were people that had been harmed by MK Ultra, and the UFO thing was supposedly part of MK Ultra, or some of it. The marks on Harriet's neck, Scully has those. The missing fetus, which I hope is okay to talk about now, so many years later. The intelligence agency connections, Harriet's dad working at the secret base in eastern West Virginia, which was put into the show. My dad worked at the secret base, secret part of the carbide plant in Charleston, which had the first nuclear reactor in the world, which was kept secret the whole time and finally dismantled in the 1990s. And so some of the stuff from that reactor went to developing the Manhattan Project for the U.S. Army, which carbide did. So that was like the seed reactor where they did all their first experiments and stuff. Possibly farmed some of the uranium processing out to the Germans, to Hitler's regime, or to IG Farben, more specifically, because carbide had deals with IG Farben. And today, the carbide plant, what used to be the carbide plant, is now the Bayer plant, IG Farben. So, stuff is all known. It's all, well, the reactor isn't known. But they were storing the radioactive water from it, waste, in the tanks at the bottom of Woodward Drive, right across the street from the Blue Moon Tavern, where Charlie Manson's mother used to hang out, and very close to Charlie's house, which we just discovered last weekend on Thanksgiving. I went back to Charleston. Charlie's house is no longer there, been torn down. So has Indrid Cold's house in Midway. So that's kind of a weird coincidence there. Some moves were made in the Hellier movie to try to place Indrid in Ashland, very similar to Peter Levenda's attempts to put Manson in Ashland. And Manson had an uncle in Sarita, Canova, West Virginia, which is across the border from Ashland, but that kind of ended in '67 when his uncle was murdered. Although there are rumors that a Manson family cult still exists there, and that could be why Alan Greenfield led the Hellier team to think that Ashland was the place. Lavinda is an occultist, a ritual occultist of the Crowleyan tradition. Alan Greenfield is as well. David Ferry of the JFK assassination lore also was one. He was seen in Point Pleasant, we think. Fred Krisman, another occultist, seen at the Derenberger house, posing as a UFO investigator. Krisman also involved as a money man in the JFK assassination. So the Hellier team may have stumbled onto an offshoot group of this Manson cult, which may be part of another larger cult, which has changed names over the years. It could, once it was called the Finders, then it was the Foundation, and so on and so on. And they're these super right-wing Christians who basically traffic in kids and mistreat them and brainwash them. And I even ran across a victim of this not long ago who had undergone horrible tortures in a religious cult in West Virginia. Really unbelievable stuff. And we're kind of moving in that crazy right-wing direction, or have been lately. And a lot of the social media has sort of gathered around to, and a lot of the people that previously seemed like they were sort of neutral politically, who were cryptozoologists and paranormalists, Forteans, all turned out, not all of them, most of them, have turned out to be right-wing Trump supporters. I think in most of the men. I think in the women we see more of a larger section of them not going that way, because they can sort of read the writing on the wall there. James Woolsey of the CIA announced that they were going to do this stuff on social media, and they did. And it wasn't long after that the show Ancient Aliens came on board, right at the time when there was more push than ever to, this is around the time Keel died, 2009, pressure being put on the UFO community to explain why women had been brainwashed or hypnotized to remember their UFO encounters and then undergone sexual abuse. Maybe the original encounters themselves were sexual abuse as part of MK Ultra, and the people were made to believe that aliens had abducted them when it wasn't. It was humans. And this was something that there was a lot of consciousness about at that time. And what happened was they ended up blaming it all on David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins. And that's it. Okay, well, that's over. We found a couple of guys we can blame it on. Well, they didn't have anything to do with all these other hundreds of instances of things around the country. But what this did was, by having Ancient Aliens come on board, a really well done, visually show, it just totally took the discussion in another direction, which is way back in time. Like, it's all about biblical times and that sort of thing. So there's no lawsuits that are going to come out of anything that's said on that show. But at that time, there was a real, possibility that the government could be sued by UFO victims, if you want to call them that, for this kind of stuff, because some of it was government funded or started. And I think what happens with a lot of these things is that private players get involved. They see that the government's doing something, and then they start their own cult. So you can't tell which of these cults is officially sanctioned or not. But you do know in the case of the Finders, there were legal proceedings, and they did run up against national security when all was said and done. So they're still covering up the 911 stuff. They'll mention it as in a montage in a typical show, Mothman was seen at the Twin Towers, Mothman seen at Chernobyl, a couple of others. But they never really get to the witnesses. Like, what were the precognitions that the witnesses got? Like, I've never had anybody ask me that, I don't think, other than the PRP team, maybe John Keel. But other than that, no one seems interested in looking into that. Keel found all kinds of interesting things about the whole process. Certain people with certain genetic makeup are more likely to be psychic, more likely to have UFO and paranormal events. Rh negative, more likely. It's a chicken or egg thing. You really don't know what's causing what. And it's super complicated. I don't think we'll ever figure it out until we really figure out the human mind or the brain. So a lot of it just becomes indeterminates. That's what in the Buddhist world, they call indeterminates, or things that you're never going to figure out. So best not to waste too much time on them. I did want to mention the witness researcher dichotomy, I guess. The researchers are really the only ones the public sees nowadays. I mean, you might have a little quick interview with a witness, but they're sort of just fodder. The witnesses are fodder for these increasingly narcissistic researchers. With social media, it's only fueled the worst of the worst, and it's constant ads for their books. I don't want to see another post with somebody's books laid out on a table. It's just boring, guys. Even if they are in a different language. So you're part of the international crypto scene, which is organized by somebody in some castle somewhere. They're way too organized for it to be grassroots. So you can kind of break these researchers into 2 or 3 groups. One is the kind that rehash old stories and take one visit to the area, and of course, they'll do a book, and they'll get a tax write-off for their trip. Some, in another group, in another category, will ask for an interview from actual other researchers or witnesses. And others will ask you for permission to quote your work. So that's better. At least they're asking you. But in some cases, you feel like you kind of got cheated or something. There's one guy who's written a book about Keel that he asked me if he could use some of my stuff, and I'm like, yeah. And he mentioned, he gives me credit and everything, but it turns out there's a whole lot of it. Like, I wonder if the guy could have done the book without using my stuff. And that would be fine too if the person involved was nice, but they're not nice. Like, they don't ever, have a kind word. And it's like that with so many of these guys. They're competing with you. That's how they see it, and they're not going to. Only the ones that they're organized with do they give, and they give them back pats all day long. If you're part of the International Cryptozoology Museum Group, for instance, you'll have constant support for what you're doing. If you're going out if you're Seth Breedlove and you're going to Pacific Northwest to take a picture of yourself on top of the mountain and not finding Bigfoot, as long as you're supportive of the International Cryptozoology Museum, they will support you, and because you're taking up the bandwidth, and that's the most important thing with the cryptozoology people. They really are on a mission to change the definition of supernatural creatures to normal creatures. That's been their stated objective for the last 20 years. Now, why would you want to get your information from these people? And a weird sort of I guess it's always been this way, but there are a lot of ritual occultists in this field. I think some, kind of goes hand in hand with the Dungeons and Dragons and Renaissance Fair and spooky things and bumping the night. But sometimes I think it's gone further than that, and they're taking up a spot too. They're like taking up a part of the bandwidth, and I think they're growing in power. And if you're not in their in group, I mean, forget it. Most recently, I was attacked by some of these ritual occultists on the John Keel list. One whose name was Barb, and one who has a fake name, Jimmer Hardy. Jimmer's written a book called, I forget the name. Anyway, it's about a young boy who's very similar to myself, and a lot of the stuff that went on in the Mothman world is in there. And he's made this guy the protagonist of the story, so he obviously thinks it's cool if you can have psychic occurrences. But then, when we're talking on the list itself, he's very down on me. He's very like, I don't know, what is it about my psychic stuff that is not working for you, Jimmer? You obviously think it's a good subject, and you'll even lift some people up and say, this is a cool thing, but not when it's you, Andy. And that's odd. Like, what's that all about? And he even goes so far as to say that I'm not being a good steward of the John Keel legacy, whatever that is. And I don't know how. It can't have anything to do with the books themselves, because the books are simply reprints of material. I have very little input into those at all. This guy simply is a MAGA type right-winger, and he doesn't like my liberal stances on things, and so that's why I'm a bad steward of John Keel, simply because I'm a liberal. Even though John Keel was too, he was a liberal. These ritual occultist people seem to want to sort of push things weirdly to the right, even though you'd think they'd be pushing them to the left. So how many of these ritual occultists are like old style new agey kind of lefty people anymore? Have they like switched sides? And are they like more, I don't know, if Crowley kind of hung out a lot with the Germans, pretended to be a Nazi, and well, maybe he really believed that stuff. Maybe he really kind of wanted there to be clamps put on a large portion of the society so that this small minority could live lavish, indulgent, hedonistic lifestyles, which is kind of what we have in the United States. You have 90% of the people working their asses off to get by, while the Hollywood crowd and others, investment people, they're living high on the hog, and the wealth gap is increasing all the time. And it has an effect on things. It does. People are desperate. They're desperate. The pandemic has caused people to, they lose their job or get their hours cut back. Well, I got to do a blog now. I got to get this crypto blog going and get some clicks and try to monetize, jump in on the bandwagon. There's so many of these people doing this now. They have zero regard for the truth. Not all of them. I'll take that back. There are some good ones, but for the most part, it's just every single thing in the book. I saw Lon Strickler recently give a talk about everything that he's into, and it's just unbelievable. Like everything from my story that happened to me incidentally, and I have no real interest in, other than it happened to me once, like having an attachment. I talk about in one of my books about how I went to see this energy healer in front of a class, or I was taking the class, and this entity came out of me. And after that, I had a lot clearer memories of Woodward Drive. It's like the entity was clogging up and blocking me from remembering a bunch of stuff. And so I assumed that I picked it up there. at Woodward Drive. Well, anyway, Lon just took this and popped it right into his spiel. So he's had attachments. He knows all about them. You name any kind of psychic thing. I didn't even know it was called an attachment, right? I'm not going that. I don't want to go in that direction. I like to go in a more provable direction. At least interview real people who've had the real experiences that we're talking about. Just don't grab somebody that is just an attention seeker. But he had everything you could think of, and very bored too, almost like really blasé, like, oh yeah, I've had the attachment, this, and I've had several. I think the whole mass of that kind of stuff being so prevalent now, it's really feeding into the crazy political realm and a total misunderstanding of science and rejecting science and rejecting. I mean, all of these things have been here to me. None of this seems that new, really. It's just been amplified tremendously. And hopefully a lot of people will wake up one day and say, man, I was totally full of shit back then. And I might even do that too. Okay, I've got a couple minutes left on this tape, and since I've already spent far too much time talking about Loren Coleman on it, I might as well mention a couple of other of his compatriots who have caused me problems, such as Greg Bishop, who started spreading 10 years ago the story that I had stolen a photo from him, which I actually have documented proof in writing, asking him if I could use it, and then I never actually used it. I had a draft worked up that I showed him, and he got mad. And then when I'm like, he's like, don't say anything. If you do, I'll say something else that I used. He wrote an introduction to one of my books. I don't know how he could say he didn't write the introduction. I quoted one paragraph of his in one of the books, which I responded to, making it an educational, back and forth, therefore fair use. Interestingly, that was about Union Carbide being involved in the Roswell incident. They had gone back to the site, dug up the dirt, found this glue in it, had it analyzed, and it was Union Carbide glue from that era. And I'm like, well, there you go. That is a little piece of evidence to support my idea that at the South Charleston plant where my dad worked, he and others were working on drone craft, because he was a big gyroscope guy, apparently, and was a chemical and electrical engineer. So he's one of the guys they would need to do the propulsion for these things, which did involve both electrochemical power sources. So Greg tries to say that Carbide didn't start selling that glue until 1949 or 8, therefore it couldn't be the same, it couldn't be that glue. I'm like, well, but they always develop these things under contract with the government, usually classified, long before they actually sell the products to the public. So they could have had that for years before that. So why was Greg trying to put a break there between Carbide and the story? Then he goes and writes a book called A for Adamski, which puts John Keel and Gray Barker together in the introduction or the dedication, calling Barker, Keel, and somebody else the Holy Trinity of ufology, I think. Like, how do you put John Keel together with Gray Barker? And what's the purpose there? I mean, Bishop and Golightly, his publisher, have long kind of disparaged Barker, spread the idea that he was a hoaxer, so that, for some reason, I don't know why exactly, but Barker, for most of his career, the early part, 3/4 of it was straightforward reportage. And there at the end, he got a little disgusted with everybody, and he may have pulled a scam or two on other researchers who were scammers. You see, he was scamming scammers. It's a whole different thing. So I don't know what Bishop's up. He's definitely working with the ritual occultists. Barb and her Athens, Ohio, witch coven ladies, some of whom which on the Mothman list were wishing me dead and talking about drinking my blood, and then talking about the bake sale in the next breath. It was very strange. Very strange. I have no idea what these people are up to. But she's from Charleston too, so that's kind of odd. Got to get a local involved. Get another local involved that you can hand the story over to, as long as it's not me. That's their view, as long as it's not Andy.
I must sleep in my house, settle down with my spouse. When I look out at night, I see a face looking in, feeling fears, bolting locks, must remain in my box. Silent owl, hiding fox, both the fowl in the box.
Beautiful, partially cloudy sky with a dozen or so vapor trails supplied by drones or else a party store in heavy metals.
I will dream in my box. I will feel through the box. I see lights in the box. There's truth in the box.
Here's the defense for the big boys tonight. Warming up in the bullpen is Hank Kissinger, flanked by coaches Brzezinski and Tony Blair.
Hear the voice in the box. Hear the tick of the clock. Hear the voice from the box. There's truth in the box. There's truth in the box. There is truth in the box.